She is a multi-talented leader who indebtedly served as the director for a couple of nonprofits, one including Teach for America, and served as a fourth grade teacher at a Title I school in deep East Oakland for 5 years.
Sound business.
Right? She has 2 master's degrees, one in urban education and the other in industrial organizational psychology.
Wow.
She is obsessed with empowering children, woohoo, with the confidence to advocate for themselves, which is one of the reasons she started the Box Care. In her spare time, she enjoys cooking and bike riding with her children and husband. Welcome, Chaz.
Hey,
Nice
what's going
to
on,
meet
Chaz?
you.
Welcome,
Nice to meet y'all too.
What's happening?
So, Chaz, our wonderful, esteemed guest for today, the Box Care. What is it? Tell us about it.
So,
Man, you just went right into
Right.
it. Like,
That's
you get to know Chaz a little bit.
Well, what you have for
Wow.
breakfast today?
We already talked about breakfast.
well, the Box Care is a community for children who menstruate. And a little backstory. In 2018, my older sister passed away, and
Sorry to
she
hear that.
left. Thank you. Still grieving, still going through the process, still healing. And she left behind 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. And about a year after she passed, her baby girl was spending the night at my house, and for some reason, I brought up periods. And my niece was like, "Oh, I started." And I got super pumped. I'm like, "Oh, okay, you started. That's what's up. Like, when did you start?" And she was like, like 3 to 4 months ago."
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh, like,
Wow.
did you tell anyone?" And she was like, "No." And immediately that excitement, my excitement, turned to guilt, turned to sadness, because for one, I knew how involved my sister was. Questy, you met her a few times.
Absolutely.
You knew how amazing of a mother she was. And
Mhm.
so I felt guilty. I felt sadness because I knew my sister would have been there for her during that major developmental time in her life.
Yeah.
And then I was sad because, like, wow, you had to really go through this by yourself. And so that's what really sparked my interest in starting the Box Care.
Right.
And we started in February 2021.
Wow.
And since then, I've just been able to do a lot of research, really see what our Black and brown children need, and go from there. So we're still in, I'll call it our beta stage, just collecting a lot of insight so we can build the best programs for our Black and brown children.
I just want to chime in real quick. Like, what was that experience for yourself? Like, at that point in your life, you know what I'm saying? Trying to go back to that 13-year-old self of you and you know, relate to these young ladies out here.
Yeah.
Talk to us.
Man, how was it for me? I think one thing that I'm always telling people, because my best friends would tell you, my husband would tell you, I don't stop moving. And so thank you for even asking that, because I don't think I have had the time or the space, or given myself space to really reflect on that. Like, how am I doing?
Yeah.
Dealing and being so
serving so many others.
Yeah, you know,
we're
what I'm
always
saying?
serving.
Yeah. So I don't have to get back to you on that.
Wow. Yeah, that is real.
Yeah. Let's talk about it, because I don't have any little sisters, at least blood sisters or older sisters, and women that were close to me while I was growing up. So I really missed out on that experience, being a male, having privilege, like seeing women go through that period of having their first
No
period,
pun intended.
Right.
No, anything can happen. Let's get it. But
Right.
I want to ask you, like, honestly, why is there so much shame around that experience, or would you call it shame around that experience of having a period and having a cycle, especially as a young woman?
I think that we are making great progress. I think that from my experience, even me doing my in-school program with 2 Title I schools right now in Deep East Oakland, I feel like it has been a shift. I think growing up, it might have been more shame when I was growing up. But right now, this generation, they're embracing it from what I can see. But one thing that I did learn from my niece hiding her period from her dad and from me is that it's not uncommon for children, especially in underserved communities, to hide their periods because they don't want to have that extra burden on their family.
Oh, wow.
And so it's actually pretty common for children to hide their periods from their families.
And it sounds like also too, it's not just a emotional situation. It can be financially a burden because the products can be pricey. And also too, there's this lack of really wanting to talk about, especially with a father, right? Lack of really wanting to talk about whether you need tampons or whether you need pads or how to use those things. Right. Yes. So, I mean, yeah. And so when you are, I was living with my dad at one point.
That's what I was about to ask.
When I came back from Ghana, I was just living with my dad, and I had started my period maybe the year before, and he was like, I said, listen, I'm going to need you to go to the store, and he was like, oh,
not knowing what he's going to look for, with like, what am I doing here? I'm totally ignorant to this.
And he literally did hand gestures, like, am I supposed to get this thing, and this is one hand gesture looking like a tampon.
They can't see this on the radio.
Right, and then or this thing, and he did another one that looked like a pancake, and I'm like, wow, we really have some education that needs to happen here. And so
he tried his best.
He was hey, he did what he could. But there, I want to talk a little bit about the financial situation that people will face, and these kids that aren't telling their families, like your niece, then she's got to come up with the money to buy the products herself.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
So when I asked her what she was doing to support her, she said she found her mom's pads under the sink that she left behind.
Oh, wow.
So she was using those. So she taught herself.
Wow.
But to your point, when I first started the box care, I started as a gift subscription model, where the theory was beautiful, right? Like, let me send a replenishment to homes every month, coupled with or paired with some self-care items to really associate periods with the good time of the month. And it was great in theory, but knowing who I am, I'm a community server, and I really want to uplift our Black and Brown communities. I said plenty of times already. What I noticed with that model is that the people who were buying it were from affluent families or from well-off families.
Wow.
And they weren't able to afford the gift subscription box that I was putting out there. Because period poverty is real. And
period poverty.
Yeah.
Can you please speak to that and explain what you mean by that?
Before we get into that, we got one of our viewers out there. It's Frank Klein Jr. He says we have to learn and grow as men to support our young daughters.
Thank you,
Franklin.
Yes.
Thanks, Frank.
Period poverty, please.
Well, to Franklin's point, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to start the gift subscription, because in my mind, I could see those boxes going to homes with the content that I included, some conversation starters to really empower our men, right? Single fathers. But to Kenya's point, period poverty is the inability to afford quality menstrual products.
Wow.
And quality access to quality period care education. And 1 in 4 children, they miss out on school every year because the lack of access. And so, y'all know the Tom shoes?
Yes.
And so that was one of my thoughts too, like maybe I can do a buy one, give one to really support these families. But that didn't take off. And so now I'm really focusing in on that quality education piece, something that's my specialty.
So can I ask you, what is what you're including in your education when you're talking about the products for these children.
So I'm phasing out the boxes because I realized like it wasn't really serving the communities, and so I've actually phased out the gift boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And what was included though was a nice magazine that had writing prompts, reflective corners, fun activities that really supported the mental health of our young menstruators, a tracker for children to learn how to track their cycle. So that was included in the magazine that came in the gift subscription boxes. But now moving forward, we are taking a holistic approach to health education for our Black and Brown menstruators.
Wow.
And so when I say health, I'm not just talking about, go to the doctor, get a checkup, or check your cycle. Health to us is the mental health, the physical health, the relational health. How are you building healthy relationships? Emotional, social, and like I said, a holistic approach to really create that solid foundation that our children need in order to show up in these classrooms.
How do you feel that some of these young ladies may not understand what they might be going through emotionally once their cycle starts? Like these feelings and everything that they might start to experience and don't know how to quite express at that point.
And let me say this. Let me piggyback on what Kat is saying, because he said young ladies, and you're talking about young children who menstruate. Not always ladies, you know, not always people that identify as girls. They just don't.
Hey, let's get into it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was your question?
So,
Thank
you, Kenya. That was a great question. I have to go back and say it again. No, I was pretty much saying that, like, you know, for these young girls, people people that are out there that are, you know, experiencing this, you know, sudden shift in their emotions. You know, how do you address that with them, that you are going to be experiencing a shift in your emotions maybe during this time of the month? You know, because not everybody experiences it, but some do. And some might not know how to identify that with their own body.
That's a good question.
Yeah, very good question. And so, as I mentioned, I phased out the gift boxes and I'm focusing in on those in-school programs. And so I partnered with Reach Academy, which is on 98th and Bancroft.
Shout out to Reach.
Hey, Reach. I taught there for 5 years. I miss it. And I also partnered with Elmhurst, which is the feeder school from Reach. And I collaborated with the restorative justice practitioner and with the principal and the 5th grade teachers at Reach, and developed some workshop topics to really address some of the immediate needs, especially coming out of a pandemic and all of that. Or we're still in the pandemic, but you know. And so one thing that we're really focusing in on is that emotional state of what happens when you go through puberty. And so one lesson that I did recently was we taught children the cycles and we related it to the seasons.
Oh man, break it down for us.
Yeah, and it was really just nice to see them grasp such a complex thing that is happening every month once you start your period. And so what we had them do is we was like, what usually happens in the winter time? What do you usually like to do? Oh, I like to snuggle up with my hot chocolate and I like to do that. And I'm like, yeah, and that's the time of the month when you're on your period. And you usually during your period will like to snuggle up. What happens in spring? Oh, flowers start blooming and, you know, it starts getting back to, you know, looking pretty outside again. I said, okay. And in that time of the month, that's when you're most ready to go back out. You're ready to re-engage with your friends and family.
Yeah.
And so we just compared the 4 cycles that they go through every month with the seasons to really get them an entry point. They don't have to know all of the biology and all of that. They just have to know the basics so that they can be able to explain to others like, oh, I'm in my winter stage right now. I really just need some space. I really just need to be by myself. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to be cozy. I need to be
Yeah,
comfortable.
exactly.
Yes, I just need a blanket.
With these workshops as well, do you also talk about how nutrition can affect the menstrual cycle as well? Because I know sometimes it can be kind of intense with the cramping and different other things that affect them, and nutrition plays a huge part into that as well.
It does. It really does. And I actually have someone that I'm consulting who is a period expert. And we talked about what would be the biggest bang for our buck, especially for the 5th grade and 6th graders. And we decided to start with the seasons, the inner seasons. But yes, you're totally right. The nutrition is a big component, and it impacts their emotions and their hormones and all of that. And so when I was doing the period boxes, we did include on the tracker the fruits and vegetables that they should be eating for each.
Now that's dope.
Yeah, for each,
That's
for each
super dope.
cycle.
It is.
But moving forward, I definitely would like to include
Like herbs and different
Exactly.
things.
Yeah.
Teas they can drink.
And let me ask you this, Chasmin. So I'm not going to say I speak on behalf of all men.
Please don't, because I'm in this room and I don't know what you're about to say.
Only the vegan bodybuilder men that are in this room right now. But I would really like to know, why do women have periods? Like, what is the purpose of that?
What is the purpose?
Oh, that's a bad question. I mean,
is that a real question?
Absolutely.
Is it
For the men,
I'm stepping out. I'm stepping out. I'm
gonna
stepping out the
say-
studio.
Is that bad?
I was going to say,
I'm
not
glad that's not on.
everybody knows.
I can
Okay.
break it down.
Not everybody
Okay.
knows why periods
There we go.
exist.
King, you got my back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was about to walk out the studio.
And I think
I'm glad you
I
said
think,
not on
let
all
me just say
behalf.
this, you guys. I think that I'm actually really glad that Kwesi asked that question, because we cannot assume. Okay, do you guys know what I mean? We literally cannot assume that every single person on this planet, or every single person that's listening to us, knows why, especially men and a lot of women, knows why periods exist or why we have periods. And so, or what is happening inside of the woman's body when the period is happening, and why. Because, I bet you anything, there's so many men out there that are like, it's just something that happens every month. We don't really know why. It's the time where they get cranky. It's the time where they get cranky and where they want chocolate, or whatever.
Leave them alone.
So there's more to it. There is more to it, ladies and gentlemen, than that. So tell us, talk to us.
Yes, and to speak to that, I just want to shout out my wonderful husband, because he's learned my cycle. And so for all the men out there,
Shout out
if
to Travis.
if you are with a woman who menstruates, please learn their cycle, or a person who menstruates. Learn their cycle so that you know exactly when to give them space, when to give them a foot massage,
when to give them chocolate,
and when to give them chocolate, right? So the way that I introduce periods to the children I'm working with right now in our in-school program is we talk about puberty. We talk about the changes that happen, the physical changes that they can see, and then some of the emotional changes that happen. And then we also talk about the anatomy. And we break down the outside of a female's reproductive system, which includes the vulva, not the vagina. The vagina is inside, and the vulva and the clitoris. And we talk about the
legs of the clitoris that people don't even know exist sometimes.
What
Let's
legs
talk
you
about
talking?
them legs.
What legs you talking about?
Right? Okay. It's not just on that what you see on the outside, but there's an inch or two of legs on the inside of your body that you don't even see.
You should.
I need a visual display.
And so then we talk about the anatomy on the internal, what they cannot see with their eyes. And that includes the vagina, that includes the fallopian tubes, the endometrium, the ovaries. And once they do a cool labeling activity, we talk about the journey of the egg and all that, but then they do a design challenge, because I really want them to know the parts of the female reproductive system before we go into what actually is happening. And so they do a cool design challenge. I bring some arts and crafts, and they design their own female reproductive systems, the ovaries, all of that. And so from there, Kwesi, and everyone else who,
I'm here.
who
I'm
loves.
present.
So women are females are born with ovaries that hold our eggs. And I think it's close to like 200,000 that are in there. I know, right? And once you start your period, every other month, an egg is released from the left ovary. And then every other month, the next month, an egg is released from the right ovary.
Wow.
And so from the ovary, the egg travels through the fallopian tube, and then it goes into the uterus. And the uterus is the womb. That's where the baby is built. That's where the sperm goes and meets with the egg. And so I tell them, I said, since y'all not having any babies anytime soon, that egg is then released through your vagina and then through to, your blood. And the blood and all of the nutrients are actually the endometrium. And the endometrium gets built. Are y'all falling asleep?
No.
Oh,
Very excited.
Not at all.
This is blowing my mind. I got so many questions.
And so when the egg gets to the uterus, the endometrium builds up a wall of nutrients to protect that baby that's supposed to get or built in the womb. And when it doesn't get met with the sperm, it gets released every month. And so that's the period blood that comes out. And these students are so amazing. One of them was like, hold on, is that why women get their tubes tied so they can't get pregnant?
Wow.
I'm like, that's exactly why. So there's no tunnel for the egg to meet with the sperm.
Wow.
But yeah.
Okay. So I have a question.
Yeah.
How big is the egg?
Oh, I don't.
It's
hey,
like
let me just say
It
this.
is microscopic.
Yeah, let me just say this, y'all. I am by any means a doctor.
You're the expert today.
But yeah, it's very tiny, very tiny.
They're very tiny, right?
Shout out to that knowledge.
Yes. So I just want to say behind the scenes, y'all, I showed Kwesi a
No,
picture
no,
of
she
a,
didn't.
I guess,
No, she didn't.
okay. I showed
Uh-oh.
Kwesi a picture
The legs?
of a clitoris,
I call it cat.
Hey,
right? Okay, because these
I think
little
our viewers
legs,
on social media want to
okay,
see this.
so yes,
I think that was-
hashtag
Okay.
clitoris,
Hashtag,
okay.
I don't know what that is.
because that is what a clitoris is.
That's
What a clitoris
is.
looks like. Okay.
Right, that's what
It is all of those legs
see?
are inside the woman's body, and that is the only the top part is what y'all see, but all the other stuff is also still part of the clitoris. I'm sorry, one of my
We need to talk
Instagram.
about periods.
Right. I know, but I'm just
Periods.
she mentioned the body, which is not a scary thing.
Mm-mm.
It's not a scary thing because everybody wants y'all want everybody to know what your penis looks like. Okay, but
That's all.
that
Except
is
cat
that
mostly.
I'm just saying that is
Cat.
that
How do I get in this
that
cat?
is
only,
part.
only the vegan bodybuilders in the room.
I got
Right.
just throw it under the bus.
You just threw a cat under the bus.
I'm vegan, but I'm not a bodybuilder, so I don't fit into that category.
Bringing cat's job into the.
Yeah, let's retreat to cat. I don't know what to say. I'm just
Because
going to talk about cat.
also when the word vulva is brought up a lot, people don't know what that even is. And so when we're talking about periods, we're talking about something that needs to be talked about, right? We're talking about something that people don't necessarily understand. People do not understand how women's bodies work. I'm just saying that. I went to an all-women's college. Shout out to Spelman in Atlanta,
Shout out.
Georgia.
Okay.
I went to an all-women's college. I took a human sexuality course, and I learned about the penis. I'm just telling you, I went to all women's college, and
Wow.
then
They didn't have nothing for women. That's what you're trying to
there
say,
was
right?
not any education on the reproductive system, the women's reproductive system. I learned about that when I was trying to get pregnant
Mhm.
in my early 40s.
Wow.
Okay, that's when I learned about how it worked in there. And so that is significant.
Yeah.
That education needs to happen. And if you can go to an all-girls school and learn about the vas deferens and the meatus, okay, I can tell you all about the parts of the penis. Okay, but then but I didn't know anything about how my fallopian tubes worked.
Interesting.
You know, and so those things are important. So
I think
the
that just-
menstrual cycle is incredibly detail oriented, right? So
And I just think that brings a deeper conversation is like our parents, since they're not knowledgeable, we wait until who has that conversation with us. You know what I'm saying? If our
Right.
parents don't know anything about the reproductive system
Right.
and stuff like that, it's like, oh, well, I mean, they'll find out about it somehow,
Well,
especially now,
but even if our parents do know, you guys, my mother is a biologist.
Wow.
Okay. And I got to my 40s without understanding how that worked, because in some of our generations, right, it's not okay to talk about
It's not
those
appropriate.
things. It's not appropriate to talk about those things, and a lot of things are kept in the dark.
Right.
And that's what creates that shame, and it should not exist.
Yeah. And I'd like to ask you, Chasmin, in terms of systemic change, like, would you agree with what Kenya is saying? Is that still happening in schools today? And if so, what is the change that's happening to bring more of an awareness around just general sexual health?
Whew.
Oh,
We already know. We were in the system. Our children are in this oppressive educational system. And one thing that I'm working on right now to support our teachers. And so a little backstory about me is that I started in the classroom, and then I ended up becoming a teacher coach and building professional developments because I wanted to broaden my impact. And similar to what I'm doing right now, right? I'm starting this in-school program directly with the students. And if I really want this program, which we got 100% of people saying like they will recommend this to other people.
Nice.
And so it's making great impact. They're seeing the changes in their students, very confident, self-aware, all of those life skills that they need in order to navigate through all these changes and challenges in life. And so I've realized, similar to when I was teaching, and I was having a direct impact on students, in order to broaden the impact and to really see the impact that I want to see, especially against or in this oppressive system, I'm going to have to really support teachers. And so right now I'm working on a teacher workbook paired with a professional development. I already have a verbal offer from a school in Oakland for next school year to support their teachers with having access to this curriculum so that they can really build those foundational topics within their classroom. But yeah, to answer your question, this is just a tip at the iceberg. There's a lot more that needs to be done, and I'm just trying to do as much as I can.
What's super dope is you planted a seed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you saw the need for this, and the cool thing is, as you further yourself, like you're seeing all these gaps that need to be filled within the system, within the education, the whole nine, and you're like, okay, well, let me take the opportunity to fill these gaps as I go. Because until people start going out there and planting these seeds, we don't know exactly what we can say there are gaps that need to be filled, but where do we start?
Yeah.
Where do we lay the foundation?
Yeah.
Does it start in the home, or should it start in the school? Should it start with?
I think it always starts in the home. It starts within.
It should always start in the home. It should. Does it though? Is really the question.
I think.
Yeah.
I would say no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back to the show. So you're listening to KGPC 96.9 FM Oakland and streaming online at www.kgpc969.org. This is the Anything Can Happen show with Kenya Asa, Kwesi Dreams, and your man, Cat Fitness. Today, we have a very interesting topic. I don't know if y'all been listening as of right now, but if you haven't, you got to go back to the beginning of the show and just take it for what it is. It's like we have to learn more about ourselves, and when we're talking about the menstrual cycle, period. I mean, it's so funny because these days, that's become like a trendy word. Everybody says period. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the new period
with a T at the end.
You know what I'm saying?
Period at the end as well.
But we're talking about the menstrual cycle,
That's
right? And how it's how our young ladies are transitioning from young ladies into young women,
or young people.
Yeah.
Right, because so I do want to piggyback on that, what Kat just said, because we have kids that are menstruating that identify as boys. Okay, so I have a friend whose child is going through that right now, had to go through the kind of decision-making process, born identified as female at birth, and is now 12 years old and identifying as male. And so then we have this conundrum of the period is coming unless that is interrupted by hormones or something like that, by some sort of intervention. And then you've got the emotional issue around that, as this is a person who will be menstruating, right? Have you guys have you thought about or connected or confronted that kind of some of that emotional strain that might be happening, because this child fortunately is involved in some of the programs out there, the hospital programs, the counseling. This child has a very, very supportive family, and this child is openly identifying now as a boy and surrounded by a lot of love and support, right? But there comes this point with those children that menstruation is going to happen, or not. That's a big decision. Do we do the hormones or do we let the menstruation happen? Have you thought about that aspect of it at this point, Chaz?
We haven't thought that far down, but we are very intentional with saying children who menstruate, because we are aware that not all children who menstruate identify as a girl. And so one thing that is the foundation of our programming is all different, all equal. We recognize that we are all different. We all have different lived experiences. We all come from different levels of privilege, or not.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, we are all equal. And so one thing that I've done since February is I built up my online following, and we have 7 lead ambassadors who have been consistently showing up to our online events. And so just to break down some of the offerings that we have right now, we have our in-school program where I'm partnering with Title I schools in Oakland. And then we also have our digital community. And one thing that our lead ambassadors for our digital community go through is diversity, equity, and belonging training that I lead so that they know how to run events, our virtual events. Whenever we have a new member show up, our new guest, we want to make sure that we are very welcoming and using inclusive language to make everyone feel welcome. And so to answer your question, we're not there yet. We haven't had anyone who's gone through what you mentioned that your friend's child has gone through, but pronouns, even starting there, a few guests recently identify as they, them. And so we have to learn how to respect those pronouns because we're all different, all equal.
Well, that was one of the things that made me bring that up language is so important. And these kids are so aware of how we refer to them and the language that we use. And the language that you used was so inclusive. And as somebody who, knows godparents and all that other stuff, kids that are on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, I appreciate that language being respected. And so that's just something that's really important. That's why I keep jumping in about that.
So I got a quick question for both of y'all real quick. What do you think about manipulating the cycle? Like with hormones and birth control and stuff like that.
For whom? For whom?
For those that identify as young ladies
Okay, for those that identify as female.
Yeah, female.
Okay,
yeah.
And manipulating them for what purpose?
Well, like I said, some doctors say, if your cycle is a certain way to balance it out and stuff like that. I'm not saying I know it all, but I've heard, balancing your cycle, take this hormone or take this birth control. Like, what are your thoughts about that and how that affects the body and the other side effects that can also cause by introducing these things to the body?
Chad, do you want to take that?
No, I don't.
I find it interesting.
I'll take it. Because there are situations where, say, a young person who menstruates is having an extremely long or extremely heavy.
Who is it to say
period.
It's too long?
Well, if it's causing you physical problems, it's too long. You can't be out here being unhealthy and having a problem. A problem can happen with your period just like it can happen with your heart or your liver. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's your uterus. And so if it's, say, for example, you're having a really long period, maybe it's not a period. Maybe it's chlamydia or something like that. And so that's something to be very, very aware of. And so, but maybe it's not. Maybe you're a young person who isn't sexually active, but it can cause a lot of pain, and it's getting in the way of you living your regular life. And so then sometimes you have to be put on iron pills because you're losing too much blood. So that's a doctor, that's a physician getting involved in that situation, and that does happen. And so do I personally think that it's okay to manipulate a period? I would say absolutely, if that period is causing distress and you get really weak. There's all kinds of things that can happen from too much blood loss or not having it, your period stopping. If your period is stopping because nobody understands the reason, then that's something to see your doctor for. If your period's stopping because you're anorexic, that's your period will stop if your period
stops because you're lifting too much weight.
Yeah, sure. So there are all kinds of reasons that you might need a doctor's intervention and medical intervention.
Yeah. And Chaz, could you maybe offer some advice? Because I've dated women in the past. Maybe like
what do you mean in the past?
You're dating a woman right now.
No women. I heard one time women sometimes have painful periods, and they'll take, like, I believe Kat was saying, like, birth control just to regulate it, right? Is there any advice you could offer to women who have painful periods, or I think it's called irregular cycles? Anything of that nature?
I am not a doctor.
See your doctor.
See your doctor.
See your doctor.
But on a personal, I just personally like natural remedies, and so
can you shoot some out there for our viewers that may be interested in that?
Yes. So physical activity. Are you getting enough steps in every day? Are you moving? That's circulation. Are you eating clean? And realistically, a lot of our children, especially our Black and brown children, are not eating clean, or they're overeating, are undereating. And so I really think that periods, though, are a way for us to assess if something's off.
That's right.
And so if it is off, then something is off, and you should talk to a professional.
But then, see, because we don't go as men, we don't go to doctors and have these conversations. We just hear, like, as a third party from, like, oh, you're having an issue, now you're on birth control. Like, do they talk to you about, like, your nutrition, whether you're working out? Do they go through those steps to get to that point where they say, well, we've tried everything, this is like the last resort? Or do they go instantly for, like, the quick fix and saying, hey, take this was it birth control, and this is going to solve your problem? This is going to solve your problem, when they haven't even said, hey, you might want to think about losing weight, you might want to think about eating less processed foods, all these other options that you may have.
Growing up, I remember vividly doctors saying to me, I'm a medical doctor, I prescribe medicine. And so I think it's really depending on what type of doctor. Are you going to a specialist? Are you going to a non-traditional physician to really support you? But yeah, I think it really just depends on who you're going to. But to answer your question, they don't go all in depth like that. From my experience, they're like, here's the pills. Take this. Feel better.
Right.
Yeah.
Something that I've a teacher that I was working with, she spent some time in a country in Africa, and excuse me for not knowing which one, but she said that it just amazed her on how much period care they gave to their women.
In Africa.
Yeah, in Africa, on the first day of your period at this country, y'all, I really don't know which one, but on the first day of their periods, for all women, they can take off of work and free flow. That means not having a tampon in and just let it come out all naturally.
Wow.
In America, in this modern society, we
Keep
are told
working.
to keep pushing through
Modern.
that. Right now, okay. And I remember having basketball coaches telling me, like, you just run it off, drink some water.
Rub some dirt on it. Get back on the field.
Rub some dirt on it. Oh my God.
And so I really want to empower our young menstruators to be able to advocate for themselves and their needs by being self-aware. If I had the tools to really understand what was happening in my body, I would have been able to tell my basketball coach, like, hey, I'm in my fall season right now. I need a break right now. My body is really going through these changes. This egg is getting ready to release into my uterus. I need to take it easy right now. And I really want our children to have those tools to be able to advocate for their needs.
Yeah.
Is that
we have a comment from one of our viewers online from Blissfully Vegan. She said, "This is good. I would have to watch the replay since I missed the beginning." Outstanding.
Yeah.
I believe this is in reference to what we were talking about in terms of medical doctors and medicine and holistic versus other forms of medication. But she said, in my experience, doctors are quick to offer the quick fix, and they're more likely to offer pills and shots than actual holistic medicine. So you heard it here first.
Are these conversations that you're having in the workshop with the young ladies, empowering them and letting them know, hey, before you go to your doctor, or these are other options that your doctor may not present you, and go through those kind of channels with them as well? Or even thought about maybe introducing that information in later programs?
Yes, in later programs for sure. And so something about the in-school program that I forgot to mention is that we have built out 12 workshops with different topics. And as mentioned before, we are taking a holistic approach. Out of those 12 topics that teachers and school leaders thought was most urgent, only 2 of them were period care, focus on period care. So we already had those 2 sessions. One of the most impactful sessions that I had recently was on the sphere of control, because I really want our young menstruators to know what they have control over so that they can be accountable to their actions and not play the blame game.
Right.
And so something that we do is we like to integrate different subjects into our curriculum. And so for this, to introduce the sphere of control, the first thing I had them do when I went into the schools is I had them do a science project, a chemical reaction called Fizzy Rockets. And they combined they combined citric acid with baking soda. Not to make anything that y'all thinking about right now. And then they mixed it with water and they put it in those old school film cans. You know, when you used to develop your film?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And they put it in there with the water and they closed it up. And then it created this rocket and this explosion. And
it's like kind of like the science project when you're a kid in the volcano kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Yes. But instead,
it's similar.
Yep. They had it packed up. So that pressure that was happening made the cap explode.
Yeah.
Yep. And so from there, after, they had so much fun with it, after we had a conversation, I was like, what was in your control in that project? What was out of your control in that project? And then I was able to relate it to their lives. What is in your control in your life? What do you have full control over?
That is extremely powerful.
What don't you have control over? And then we had so many great conversations. And the feedback that I got from the school leaders and from the teachers were extremely powerful. They were saying, like, my students are taking accountability for their actions.
Yeah.
I literally physically see them pausing before making a wrong decision or a poor choice.
Or they're thinking, what's the next step? Like, if I take this action, this possibly can happen.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take that split second to see if I want to take that next step to see, you know what I'm saying? Like, and a lot of us are just going, moving. And then something happens and we don't even realize, oh, yeah, we took that step and we didn't realize, oh, that caused damage or that can hurt. Yeah, that, you know?
Yeah.
So that's very empowering to the youth.
That's amazing. Like, I really love this conversation. I know I speak on behalf of our co-hosts and also our listening audience. This is really, really powerful information. This is, dare I say, revolutionary in terms of pushing the culture forward and educating young women. But I want to ask you, especially for a major part of our audience is entrepreneurs and people who aspire to do something to change the world, right? And you as a woman, like, where does your confidence come from, right? Like your ability to see a problem and then address it and create that change. Like, where did that come from in you?
Yeah, I have to say straight up, my mom. I grew up with one of the most hardworking women who made no excuses. And she was a teacher. In addition to being a teacher, she worked at FedEx on the weekends. In addition to that, during the weekday, she was a referee. And she did all this to provide for us. And the way that she gave back to the community and to her children too, so selflessly, is just something that continuously keep me going and makes me realize, like, oh, I'm complaining about this. Why am I complaining about this? When, you know, like, and so growing up with seeing her struggle as a teacher, right? I initially, right out of college, was like, I'm not about to be a teacher. I am not, like, I do not want to struggle financially.
Oh, man.
But I knew I had to. And so after my master's in industrial organizational psychology, I was like, let me be a teacher first and see what I can contribute. And knowing that 70% of our teachers are white females, I was like, they need a strong Black woman leader. And so what keeps me going now and keeps me wanting to give back, and I have to be completely honest with y'all, is my survivor's guilt.
Oh, wow.
Growing up, like I said, my mom worked hard. We didn't come from much. But I feel like I made it out in a sense. Like I'm successful. I'm working at a small startup.
Married.
Beautiful
family.
Right. And just making a really good living in a nice home. I lived in an apartment growing up, and so my survivor's guilt is what's keeping me wanting to contribute back to the community. And I just don't feel right if I don't. Like, what am I doing with my life if I'm not giving back to a community that raised me? And so I think that's where my confidence comes from, is that I need to be a representation to show them that
what's possible.
What's possible.
Yeah.
Like, simply put, what's
real.
possible.
Absolutely.
And that also it's not all about you.
Yep.
You're making an example of yourself as someone that is doing what you need to do for yourself and your family, but also giving back to the community, because it's so important that what you're doing. And that's being a role model in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to ask you this also for the entrepreneurs. Thank you for that honest and beautiful answer. But in terms of the actual structure of the box care, like, is it an LLC? Is it an S Corp? Where does your funding come from? Like those foundational things. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I spent 10 years in nonprofit, and I knew for sure that I did not want my business to be a nonprofit, even though we are a mission-driven company. The reason for it is because of all the politics that happened, the control. I wanted 100% control. Yeah. And so I established the box care as an LLC. However, I found, you can call it a loophole, I guess. And we got a fiscal sponsor.
Ooh. And what is that for the people who don't know?
Yeah, a fiscal sponsor is a nonprofit organization that sponsors your company who has an aligned mission to theirs.
Ooh,
so for
partnerships.
Partnerships. And so we've gotten grant through Teach for America to do this in-school program with Reach in Elmhurst. And we've been applying to different grants through this fiscal sponsor.
So they qualify for the grants while they kind of contract y'all out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Funneling the money.
Yeah, and so
That's genius.
yeah, the Oakland Ed Fund is our fiscal sponsor, and we just applied to a $200,000 grant. And so once we get that grant, prayers up, the Oakland Ed Fund will take that money into their accounts, worry about all the paperwork, the taxes, and all of that, and then they will put it to our account once we show proof that we have a program and we have the breakdown and the itemization and all of that of where the funds are going to.
Yeah, so like being a nonprofit without the headaches of being
There
a
you
nonprofit.
go. There you
Nonprofit
go.
money, no nonprofit headaches. That's what I like.
There you go.
That's what I like.
Something else that we're doing too to build our revenue up is we have our online community, as mentioned, and so we have digital courses, which are live workshops that we have, and we charge for those as well.
Outstanding. And this has been freaking phenomenal. And I'm sure my co-hosts have a few more questions, but I'd like to know for our listening audience and everybody who's taken wonderful nuggets away from this conversation, how do they get involved? How do they find you? How do they get involved? How do they find the next step?
Awesome. So if you would like to get involved, you can go to our Instagram. We're most active there. We're at The Box Care. And our TikTok is actually ran by, by our lead ambassadors. And our lead ambassadors are from all over, y'all. We have one in Laurel, Mississippi. We have one in Vancouver, Washington, all over the Bay, from Oakland to San Jose. And they run our TikTok. So you can follow us on those handles. And also, you can go to our website at theboxcare.com.
Oh, y'all super official.
Yeah. And you can schedule a time to chat with me. I'm always looking to partner up, and just maybe I have some blind spots that I'm not thinking about. And so I would love to partner and hear more about how we can continuously expand this impact, our impact.
Outstanding.
So great.
Outstanding. So I know that we're wrapping up, but I'd like to know, it's a two-part question. First part, what is a little known fact or a myth about periods or sexual health that you want to really break or break down for our listening audience? And well, we'll start with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the myths, period pain is normal.
Ooh.
Period pain is common, but it's not normal. And so if you're experiencing a lot of period pain month after month, you need to listen to your body and talk to a professional to support you with finding ways to make your periods more comfortable.
Because it can't, and I want to jump in, that it can also be a sign of something more serious.
Exactly.
Yeah, like chlamydia. That's real.
Or fibroids, you know,
Fibroids.
sure, you know.
Wow. Okay. And the second part to that question, just last words, last wisdom, last nugget. I know you dropped about 1,000 of them, but just one thing that you want to make sure our listening audience leaves with, at least until our next conversation.
Yeah, find something that inspires you and contribute to the community. There's always a need, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And we're stronger together than we are just in our own lanes. So find some partnerships, build community, and give back.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much, Chasmin, for joining us. Chasmin Moses here from The Box Care, bringing it to you live. Sexual health and period education for young women and people who identify as women. Thank you so much for joining us, Chasmin. Until next time.
So make sure that you tune in every week to the Anything Can Happen show at 96.9 FM. And we're going to get y'all out of here today, y'all.
Okay.
I think we're in trouble.
Principal, right? So, yeah. Come off of the meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
I know I didn't have it, Mike. He went too fast.
I mean, it's 55 minutes, right?
Yeah, but we didn't have the music set up,
okay.
and you was cutting off, and I was looking for the music.
Good.
We'll go. I'll do it right now.
We'll repeat it.
Yep.
So, where should we start from? Should we start with the last question, or
No. Just to close. Yeah.
All right, for sure.
We're gonna close it out. I'm looking for the music and you close and I'm like
I saw that 55 minutes coming. I was like, let me hurry up.
yeah. All right. I'm gonna do it. Okay. Hold on, let me turn on the music. All right. And thank you for tuning in to the Anything Can Happen show. You're listening to KGPC 96.9 FM Oakland and streaming online at www.kgbc969.org. This is the Anything Can Happen show. Please follow us online on Instagram at ach.show. You can check out pre-recorded videos on our YouTube channel at Heal the Hood, and we will see you next week, y'all. Peace out.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for joining
Yes,
us, everybody. Anything Can Happen show. Pressy Dreams, Chasmin Moses, Cat Fitness. We in the building. Stay tuned.
We are all good. We
Thank
got
y'all.
Yeah, it's all
This is
good.
my first radio show.
We got
we
before
definitely need to chat about partnering because I do a lot of education about the vagina and stuff like that. I mean,
Yes.
I have an Instagram page called Black Yoni Bliss also. And
I think I follow you.
do you follow me? Shut up.
That sounds very familiar.
Oh my God, great.
So before you get out of here, we just want you to do a drop for the show. Just saying you're tuned in to the Anything Can Happen show. This is, and just say your name and your organization and say, make sure you tune into this next episode. Or if you want to script it out for her.
We can.
Yeah. Okay. As soon as she gives us.
How many takes? Only get one take?
No. You do as many as you need.
So, and we did. All right, that little notepad keep disappearing.
Hey everyone,